back. I'm excited to be here today with Michael Horwitz, the Executive Director of the BDO Alliance. Michael, how are you?
I'm great, David. Great to be with you.
Well, I appreciate you spending some time this afternoon after Memorial Day. Michael, I've gotten to know you pretty well over the last 4 years. Special thanks to Gary Shamus for that relationship. But I really don't know a ton about your background and history. And so, as we chat a little bit about today, as a former
Mhm.
alumni to Managing Partner Bootcamp, I'd love for you to get started with just kind of hearing about your story. You've been in the Lions for 20 years, a little bit of history before that. If you don't mind sharing, that would be a great place for us to start.
Yeah, sure, David. So I'm not a CPA and never thought about getting into this profession in undergrad or graduate school. I found my way to EY in the mid 90s through an acquisition that they made of a boutique property tax consulting firm. And that was my area of expertise at the time. So I became a partner at EY. And in the late 1990s, EY created a small alliance program called the Ernst & Young CPA Connection Alliance, which was focusing in on serving mostly larger regional firms. It wasn't something that EY was passionate about, but I became very passionate about engaging with mid-sized, smaller, independent accounting firms. So I joined BDO Alliance, which had been formed in 1993 in 2002, and I've been here for the last 22 years. It's been a real privilege for me to be on the BDO Alliance team, and for the last 9 or 10 years, I've had the pleasure of leading that team. So we focus in on serving independent accounting firms. We have 262 U.S.-based accounting firms as of today, and another 150 or so great non-accounting firms that we love to hang out with. Their common theme is that they love doing business with either BDO USA or the 262 CPA firms, including Winding River Consulting. So that's a little bit of my history. It's non-traditional, very focused in on relationships, and there's been a lot of change in our profession in the 25 plus years that I've been involved, and exciting to see how things evolve.
So just taking a step from the big picture, 10 years ago, I think you became executive director. Before that, part of the Alliance program. When you started
Yep.
22 years ago, what was the
Mhm.
size? Like how much growth has occurred since?
Yeah. So we were, gosh, that's a great question. I think we were somewhere 70 firms, maybe accounting firms. Um, the uh, the interest of BDO initially was to have geographic presence in a number of markets where we didn't have offices. And as we realized quickly that this was a big country, we could have great relationships with firms in our own backyard. So we really do have a theory of abundance in terms of our relationships. There's plenty of room for alliance firms and BDO to collaborate. And so as we've evolved over these last number of years, we've developed great relationships with firms in most BDO markets. And then in addition, we have coverage in 49 of the 50 states at this point in time. So if a BDO client has a need in a particular state and we don't have a physical presence there, we can always go to that alliance firm to help us out.
And just thinking about, that growth and the size firms that you have, what's the range these days?
So we have firms that range from probably $750,000 in annual revenues up to 200 million. The average size firm's about 15 million. We have a number of great success stories working with firms that joined our alliance program that they were $1.5 million or $2 million, and they've grown to be 40 and $50 million firms over time. Most of our alliance firms want to maintain their independence, and we're trying to help them do that. But we've also had 30 plus firms involved in transactions, acquired traditional mergers. They're merging with each other. They're taking PE money. There's a whole variety of different ownership structured. We had one large firm, Bergen KDV, that was acquired by Creative Planning, a wealth management company. So all the things that are going on in the profession, we're actually seeing within our own little micro organism called the BDO Alliance USA.
It's fascinating to think about what's happening in your ecosystem and how reflective it is to the rest of the profession. I know last year, end of 2023, you participated in Managing Partner Bootcamp. And again, Not that you're taking over a firm, you're already doing that, but a lot of the conversation at that point is just all of the change that's happening to the profession and within the profession. You're seeing it firsthand within your firms. What are the one or two things that you see in 2024 your firm's really focused on, in terms of, you mentioned independence, or you mentioned, how alternative, structures are being introduced to create new vehicles for growth going forward? If there was, one, two, three things that you really see impacting the future of the profession happening this year, what are they?
Yeah, great question, David. So if I were to pick two things, I'd hit on technology because that's a key factor for success going forward, and the degree to which our alliance members are willing to adopt next gen technology and assuming that they have to adopt it is incredibly progressive. The speed with which the technology options are changing is incredible.
Yeah.
And maybe some accounting firms were on the sideline historically to say, hey, I'm not sure that this AI thing is for real, or not exactly sure how we're going to implement it. Most of the firms have been and recognized that they need to do something. So they're somewhere on that innovation curve. So I would say technology, prominence, and willingness to invest in technology, recognizing that if they don't, they're probably not going to be in business for too long. And then the second big area would be governance and ownership. So recognizing with more and more firms looking at possible transactions as private equity is going down marketplace, as there are more platform firms looking to make acquisitions, as the pricing for accounting firms has evolved based upon PE's incursion into the profession. Just more firms are thinking about what does their future look like. And for some of them, they're clearly interested in being involved in a transaction, and we're trying to help them figure out as best we can maybe where some of those opportunities lie. In other instances, we have firms that are vehemently independent, have no interest in being involved in a transaction, want to grow organically, and sometimes want to be the acquirer. We've BDO's transitioned to an ESOP-owned firm. That's a pretty big deal for us. And we have two ESOP-owned accounting firms as members of our alliance program. Grassi announced their ESOP structure. So that's just another opportunity for firms to take a look at who do they want to be going forward. And more conversations, and we've been talking about the succession challenges that have been facing accounting firms and lack of capacity resources for the last 25 years. So this isn't new news, but it's always been, hey, there's a whole bunch of folks that are approaching retirement age. Do we have the next generation of leadership in place? And I know Winding River is heavily focused, as the managing partner bootcamp is, on that next generation of leadership. So it's more real today in the sense that many of the partners that were leading accounting firms are into their 60s and late 50s. And the younger generation is looking at them and do they have the horsepower to maintain the growth that they've aspired to have? And how is this going to transition to me? And I don't want to work as hard as maybe that prior generation of leadership, and can I use technology to make myself more efficient? And am I willing to offshore to gain capacity benefits? And all those things we're dealing with as a firm at BDO. And we're also seeing each one of those 262 firms take their own positions with respect to both technology and governance and the future of their firms.
Yeah, it's interesting. 2 weeks ago, I was able to, fortunate enough to keynote the PICPA conference around navigating the future and strategies to sustain yourself as an independent organization. And you kind of highlighted every firm has three choices today, right? You merge up, you sell to private equity, you remain fiercely independent. And as part of that process, you're going to uncover whether or not you can remain independent. But the one underlining theme there is the valuation of firms today are higher than ever before. And so at the end of the day, the message was, if you create an exceptional business, right, an exceptional firm, your people are happy, your clients are happy, you're making money, you can choose any of those three. You're in control of the driver's seat. And I think sometime with all this noise in the marketplace, we forget about that.
Yes. And most firms operate very client focused, as they should be, very people focused and team focused. And then they leave a little bit of their time to focus in on the firm and the future of their firm. And I think what you're suggesting is maybe a little more of their mindset should be focused in the business,
Yeah.
on the business, if you will, and whether those options for their future success uh, can be decided upon. What is their strategy looking like? How much of a focus will they have on migrating their traditional service offerings to include advisory services, as an example? And so maybe be more intentional in terms of their
Right.
futures. And hopefully this is helping them, whether they do the exact same thing that they would have done or they explore the other options that you mentioned. And that's a good thing.
I think that's great. I was talking to Jessica Freiberg from Society, an Alliance member, and
Yeah,
I'm actually interviewing
she's
her
terrific.
in the next 2 weeks. She's awesome, and she's a boot camp alumni also. And I asked her. I said, a lot of firms today feel like we have to grow, and I'm not saying you shouldn't be growing. Growing recruits great talent, right? People want to be part of a growth culture and organization. But growth can mean various things. And for her, their focus right now is increasing profitability, right?
Right.
And so we're not trying to grow by adding more services. We're not trying to grow by acquiring firms or taking capital on. We're just going to grow by thinking about business and increasing our profit. And I don't know if enough people are asking that question right now. Do we really have to grow the way all of this market is? Will we get left behind if we don't? I don't know if you have any thoughts there.
Yeah, well, profitable revenue growth as opposed to just revenue growth for the
Right.
sake of it. Accounting firms are in an enviable position from a supply and demand imbalance, and there's greater demand than there is supply. And we've effectively elevated our pricing to accommodate those disequilibriums and in a great way. So more accounting firms are getting paid for their real value than they've ever been. At the same time, there's some operating efficiencies that we're trying to build into our practices through offshoring and leveraging technology. So in theory, the bottom line should be growing. And in fact, in many of our alliance firms, they certainly are. When we do our benchmark survey for our members, about 85% of their revenues are recurring revenues. The average growth rate last year was about 14%, so significantly higher than inflation. But if you take into account compensation adjustments, bonuses, just the cost of healthcare is going up way faster than inflation. You probably need to be at the 7 to 10% growth rate just on your existing revenue base in order to cover the increasing costs that you're incurring. And then, you got to fill in that extra 15% that's not recurring. And then you've got to try to add for some additional growth. So firms have had their best couple of years ever, top lines and bottom lines and partner earnings. But to assume that that's going to continue forever is a dangerous assumption.
Yeah, and we're hearing a lot of that also, and that a lot of partners, I lack of better terms, bellies are full, and they're not focused on new business, which is not getting them the training of their young partners right now, right? They're not out there and showing them the way they built their business and built those relationships. And I know there's a disconnect there, but I'd like to just pivot a little bit, again, going back to your story and the alliance's growth. I mean, that requires a vision, and that requires an individual, that's passionate and very intentional with their decisions. I'd love to hear a little bit about, some of the opportunities you identified, the way that you've grown this from 75 firms to over 260 CPA and accounting firms as part of the alliance, and how that vision became a reality. What were some of the challenges, the opportunities that you kind of embarked on as part of this journey?
Well, first of all, I lead a team of 30 incredibly talented team members. So this isn't my story, it's the team's story. And without that team,
Yeah.
we wouldn't have achieved a fraction of the success that we've had.
And they're fantastic.
And then,
I agree.
and they are fantastic, many of them. And then the alignment has to be right with the firm. So our firm has to be supportive of this mission. And that's deeply embedded in the firm's DNA, all the way from our CEO, Wayne Burson, and Steve Farrar, our COO, through our principal group. I can't tell you the number of people that are involved in supporting our alliance relationships that are in addition to those 30 team members. So this is important to us. This is one of our strategic initiatives, and it has been for a number of years. And that really attracted me to the firm 22 years ago. But I would say it's evident to a greater degree. So those things have certainly helped us. The internet came along, and we could start sharing some content very easily with our members, so they get access to a lot of our intellectual property. But a willingness to be of service, and then a recognition that abundance is good, and that there's opportunities. I mean, our why, if we're looking at Simon Sinek's Start With Why, is
See the book in the background.
okay. So, my office, I wish it were cleaner. If you can see more of my office, then you probably should. But so our why is, if we can bring national and global level resources to small communities around the country that can be efficiently delivered in conjunction with great independent accounting firms, everyone wins. The client wins, the CPA firm wins. They're getting access to all of our training and a number of other resources. And then occasionally we'll find an opportunity to be of service directly to that client. So it's an ecosystem that is mutually beneficial. So the team, the firm, and then we've been very lucky. We've attracted some amazing firms to our program. If all of our members actually completed the IPA Inside Public Accounting survey, we'd probably have 180 of the top 500 firms included in that survey. So we've been very blessed to have great relationships with firms that not all of them have remained independent, and we've helped those firms grow to the point where they've been involved in a transaction, and hopefully we've helped them create greater value for their partners and for their leaders. And we know that's going to happen. But we've been able to support the independence of a vast majority of our members. And we work on a 3-year cycle, if you will. Our members join for a 3-year period. Almost none of our firms leave every time that opportunity comes up. So we've been lucky in making the right investments in relationships, I think, and can't take that for granted either. So we've been fortunate. We've also, a business resource network, the non-accounting firms, sort of where's that puck going from an advisory perspective? And there's a whole host of advisory firms in our business resource network, and we've been working on this since 2000. So 22 years of building from one business resource network member to 157 today. And the growth of advisory and the importance of advisory has really played to our strength in terms of wanting to have relationships with non-accounting firms in addition to independent accounting firms.
So, I have 2 more questions here, and the next question kind of plays off of this, and you kind of talked about at the beginning, and you may not have an answer to this, and I think every firm has different options when it comes to alliances. Private equity, right? Obviously entrenched, they've acquired some of your firms.
Yep.
Have you guys taken a position? Do you understand how they're going to impact the alliance, be part of the alliance? I think they're part of the ecosystem, but it's unavoidable at this point.
No, and we had our large alliance conference very recently, David. As you know, we had about 1,900 people. 4 of the PE firms that have been involved in acquiring our members participated directly in our program. So we had lots of conversations. We think it's great to enable our members to understand the various options. They'll make their own decisions. They're all independent. And there are more PE firms coming in to the profession every day. So it's as you're saying, and I'm sure a number of them are reaching out to you for some of the insights that you can share with them. This is not likely to be a one and done situation. And if you are, many people have an opinion of private equity. It could be a positive opinion. It could be a negative opinion. I would encourage our members just to become educated on what those opportunities are, working either directly with a PE firm or through another accounting firm that has taken a PE investment, and make the right decision for your firm. So be an educated consumer, I guess it would be my point.
I couldn't agree with you more. I get that. I don't want to talk to them. I don't want to hear it. I said, you have to understand what your competitors and peers are evaluating today, right?
Right.
If you're not
Yes.
educated, you're not informed, you can't be intentional or focused at that point. And so I think your
Yes.
statement is spot on. Couldn't agree with you more. You mentioned the Alliance Conference, and I don't know if this was part of the vision or not, but when I'm there, I've been there for 4 years now. I'm there with a guest firm, a firm that recently joined, a new BRN member. They're just blown away. There's nothing else like it next to Engage or Digital CPA. A lot of great Alliance conferences exist, but not at that scale. Did you ever envision the Alliance Conference becoming what it is today? I just think it's fascinating.
Yeah. Well, thank you for those kind comments. And no, I don't think there was a master plan. In fact, we've sort of outgrown the venue that we're at, so we've been limited in our capacity. We certainly could accommodate many more of our Alliance members attending. And so we're very fortunate. We had 98 breakout sessions, interesting content, a number of different tracks, lots of networking, but lots of CPE, some great speakers, and a trade show with a number of our members to engage. So I think we're trying to strike the right balance between education and networking, and that's been efficient and effective.
Yeah.
And then we also have some programs for emerging leaders. So it's not just the leadership teams that are attending. A number of the roundtables that we host meet at this conference as well. Some people don't love Las Vegas, so we're probably not maximizing the participation, but it's one of the few venues that can accommodate all those breakout sessions in a small period of time. So we're there for at least the next couple of years.
Well, and just kind of wrap things up here. I mean, I know you had a chance to participate in MPB Leadership Accelerated. Part of what
Yep.
I've come to love and become passionate about is I get to learn as much as our participants do, and I think you're a big part of that. So I don't know if what your experience was or takeaway as a executive director of Alliance from that program, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on just. Coming from your lens and having access to, all these firms and partnerships, what type of experience you had?
Well, I'm not aware of anything comparable to your managing partner bootcamp. So kudos to you and to Gary for creating it. It's an opportunity for folks that are assuming managing partner roles. I think there's some folks that have been part of the program that I've met that are managing partners. That we have a number of our alliance firms that have gone through your program and rave about it. My personal experience was that the content was phenomenal. So really interesting conversations, and the topics that you cover, are not traditionally topics that people talk about. So sometimes they're difficult conversations to have. So you've covered most of the things that I could think of that a managing partner would be interested in, whether they're coming in from a smaller firm or a very large firm, and the ability to have those conversations in a collegial way where you're building a class and camaraderie, and then you continue it with alumni programs and virtual conversations, and then you've got your tied into winning ways, I think is brilliant.
I can't take any of the credit. I told Gary, I said, Gary, you have 150 alumni as part of this community. You've created something incredibly special and unique. And I hope you understand that, because I know he's made a huge imprint on the profession. He's done some things, to shake the trees from time to time. But to me, I'm so fortunate to be a part of this program, have a mentor like Gary, and I just think what he's created is just truly special and unique. So appreciate you taking the time to join us. Michael, thank you for your time today. Always enjoy catching up and hearing about all the exciting things happening in the Alliance, and kudos to you and the team for all that growth.
Thank you, David. Really appreciate it. And I second your emotion relative to Gary. He's wonderful. I love him.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Michael.
Take care, David.